Okay, this is lecture 3, video lecture 3 for Comp 2. Um, I want to start off by talking about your revisions of the Martin Luther King paper. You guys did a great job on those for the most part. There were still some small errors here and there, and I've indicated those. I really like the fact that you're able to see my comments and you're following them and making corrections. Sometimes I see things the second time through I didn't see the first time, but other times I found that there's a correction that has been made for one reason or another. Maybe I wasn't clear enough about what needed to happen. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and throw up an optional revision. So if you want to correct the errors that remain, you are welcome to do so. It will bump your grade up, but you don't have to. It's not mandatory. Um, there were some issues that showed up consistently with formatting, and which is no surprise, right? This is what happens, and that's why I had you guys do the discussion question where you were asked to think about this. And what I hope you draw from that is that you know what to do. I mean, everyone's suggestions about how to do better at this were great, and they will work for you if you do them. One issue that I really want to address, and I really think this is the case because it was the case for me. Um, one person commented that you've had formatting again and again, and it's different each time for each person teaching it, and that's rough. And there's really not much of an excuse for that, except that for the same reason that you guys have difficulty with formatting, professors, tenured professors working on research tracks and things like that, they're not going to spend the energy sometimes to keep up with what the latest and greatest rules are from the Modern Language Association or the American Psychological Association. They should, but they don't always. And I myself had a professor at OU who was going from a book from the 70s. And, it was different from what I was asked to do with other professors. And your job in that instance is not to correct your professor because that's not a great idea, but to find out what that professor is demanding formatting wise and then do that and adapt. But I want to assure you that what we're working on is the latest of the MLA formatting guidelines. And the Produce site, the online writing lab, that is the first site that pops up when you Google MLA formatting, that is always up to date. And so as soon as a new edition comes out, they actually shut the website down until they have made the changes that are made in the latest edition of the style guide. So you can always rely on that. But that's a legitimate problem. And it's a problem on our side, right? That's a problem on the professor side of the equation. But then, of course, the problems on you guys' side are being overwhelmed, having task paralysis, focusing more on your what you're writing and not what it looks like on the page. Easy things to do. But you know what to do, and you know each of you is self-aware enough. I can tell by your discussion comments, you know what's going on, which is really hopeful. I mean, what I don't want to see in an assignment like that is, I don't know. I don't know why I'm not good at this, and I don't have any idea how I can get better at it. And nobody said that. And it's not true for anybody. So let's keep working on that going forward because, like I said, it gets more important as time goes by. Little mistakes on a Comp 1 paper aren't going to, impact your life, or a Comp 2 paper. But make little mistakes on a patient's prescription if you become a pharmacist, or on the structural integrity of a bridge if you're a mechanical engineer. Those can be lethal mistakes, and small mistakes make huge differences there. And as you progress in this knowledge meritocracy that we now, our economy runs on, that's why you're going to college. So you will learn things that other people don't know, and you will demonstrate skills that other people haven't demonstrated. And one of those skills is the ability to pay attention to small details. And if you get the kind of jobs or the professions that you want to do after you graduate, you're going to be in positions where small mistakes make big differences. That's what it's like at the top of the ladder for any profession, any endeavor. You know, if you're hiking up Mount Scott, no big. If you're climbing Everest, making small mistakes make a big difference. So take that to heart. Um, the things that I saw again and again were a couple. One consistent thing was that block quotes, remember, should be introduced with a colon, and common quote should be introduced with a comma. So anytime you're getting ready to write a common quote or a block quote, you're going to have punctuation to indicate that. And if it's a block quote, you have a colon, and a common quote is a comma. And the examples that I give you in my sample paper for the MLK essay show that. So if that's you, pay attention to that. Another issue that I really need to address is procon.org, because that is something that's going to come up with this particular essay that we're doing next, our Rogerian argument, which will probably be the last big grade that we do. I'm just kind of throwing this online thing together as we go, but it's very possible that this will be your last big grade, and so we really need to hit this thing out of the park if we can. And procon.org can get you in trouble because it's not a primary source, and most academic work relies on primary sources primarily. A primary source is the place it came from originally. So what Procon does, and it is a big help, is it takes snippets from other places and details those. It gives you, here's what people say on one side, here's what people say on the other side. Great information for throwing together a Rogerian argument. But those are coming from other sources. And in Procon, you have footnotes, and they are hyperlinks, which eventually you guys will be doing, by the way. We will, I'm in the very near future, the newest MLA guide will say, if you're doing this in an electronic way and submitting it electronically, you're going to use hyperlinks instead of a works cited page. But Procon does that. And if you click that footnote, it takes you down to a list of the sources that Procon is pulling from. That's your primary source. And at the very least, you want to cite that. But at the best, right, if you're in an upper division class, right, you need to go find that primary source and read it. Find the context of that particular quote from Procon. So use it appropriately. Your citation can never, ever legitimately be procon.org. Do not cite that. That's the website that procon.org is amassing these quotes from, or these references. Go to the primary source and cite that, not the website procon.org. And I want to underline that and say you can get in trouble. You can be accused of academic misconduct by pretending that you went to a primary source when you didn't really. And that's something Procon could have you do accidentally pretty easily. So it's a tool, but use the tool well. Where am I? My brain just stopped functioning. Let's talk about how a Rogerian argument is organized. I put a brief, just a rough sketch outline of what a Rogerian argument looks like up in your supplemental materials tab. So take a look at that. The thing about a Rogerian argument, it's just really easy to organize. There's only one way to do it. And so your organization is simply given to you to start with. It is a form essay, and which means you're following this format. And if it doesn't follow the format, it's not a Rogerian argument. So that is given, it's cut and dried. All you have to do is decide what you're going to put into those spaces. How are you going to flesh out that outline? The outline's already given. one of the main concepts I think we need to talk about, which we didn't get to when we went off for spring break. I was just getting to the point where we're going to talk about common ground and compromises. I think we had a pretty good handle on, you know, a controversial topic, and where there's two sides, and there's, you know, you're picking something that people are arguing about. And you're trying to take that argument and put it into the mold of a Rogerian argument. But the most important part of a Rogerian argument is the conclusion. The conclusion is lengthy in a Rogerian argument. This is not a situation where you're going to have one little paragraph at the end that's a conclusion. The conclusion is the focus of a Rogerian argument. And that's where you want to suggest common ground and a compromise between the 2 points of view. Now, I'm going to say, let's do gun control, because I don't have the ability to work with you individually as much as I would like to. If you absolutely want to do a paper on something else, fire me an email, let me know, and I will let you do that. But as a default thing, let's do gun control. And so my examples will be based around that particular topic. And with gun control, the common ground that both sides can come to, what is the goal that both sides would like to reach? And it's safety. People who want guns want to feel safe because they feel like guns help them protect themselves. And people who are wanting gun control are looking at safety issues because guns are dangerous and they get in the hands of people that don't have the responsibility to take care of them. So safety becomes the common ground. And there is common sense compromises that can be made that allow this common ground to be reached by both sides. And so some of the suggestions are, and look, the technology is there. We can make guns that only shoot if the owner is holding it. Literally reads your fingerprints just like your iPhone does. And so that would satisfy both sides. Now, both sides have to give something up, right? The side that wants no guns at all is not going to get that. The side that wants people to be able to own bazookas and you know, main battle tanks, they're not going to get what they want either. There's going to have to be some give and take. But where you know to look for that give and take is the common ground. What will both sides, if they're people of goodwill and not lunatics, what can they agree on that they want? I want to stress the objectivity. I've put a list of phrases that you can use to start sentences to remain in objective voice. And in your first minor essay that was kind of dealing with this topic, some of you did a really good job of that. Others did not and struggled a little bit. You don't want to use personal pronouns, for instance, when you're trying to be objective. Because what you're trying to do in a Rogerian argument is not advocate for one side or the other. What you're trying to do is suggest a compromise between them. So you've got to stand above these points of view. And if I speak about a topic like gun control by saying, people who are for gun control say that guns are dangerous and should not be in the hands of children, and there should be a ban, whatever. And then as I shift into the next part of the paper, if I say, however, I think that this and that should happen, the personal pronoun puts an emphasis on that part of the argument. And when you do it that way, you seem to be advocating for that point of view, and that's not your job in a Rogerian argument. Where you can shift to first person is in the compromise, because that's where you can say, I suggest this as a possible compromise between these 2 points of view. And that's where you can be creative. The first 2 parts of a Rogerian argument are kind of like mini research papers about what these people believe, what do they think. What would they say for themselves if I were to ask them? But the last part is where you can, you might think of something that no one's thought of before. I did have a paper once that was about capital punishment, and it was a really well-written Rogerian argument. And one side says that we shouldn't put people to death. We shouldn't have a death penalty. The other side says that we should. And this person's compromise was torture. They said, "Oh, let's just hurt them a lot." And I'm like, "Okay, you're a monster, but it's a Rogerian argument." And so, gave him an A. It was a well-reasoned paper, just with horrible conclusions. So you can be creative in that part of the paper, not in the first 2 sections. The objective phrases are phrases like some would say. There are those who argue that. Proponents of this idea would say. That kind of language is what you want to use. And I've given you a list of those. And it's not an exhaustive list, but it's certainly enough to get you by. What you don't want to do is get redundant with it and just every single sentence is, some would say that. Some would say and you use the same formulation again and again because that's redundant and it doesn't read well in the English language. So I've given you a smattering of them. If you're at a loss for what to do there to stay objective, use those particular formulations. A couple of things that I want to point out because they are kind of consistent issues with professors in humanities and liberal arts kinds of situations going forward. For most of us, we do not want to hear the phrase as human beings. And it's such an easy one to use. I think I've had that phrase in every single class maybe I've ever taught, at least once or twice. As human beings, we think that. And the problem there is that you hear that a lot. You know, it's kind of one of those things that will eventually give me gray hair. What else would we be, right? It's verbiage. It's not necessary. Of course, we're human beings. Let's just, you know, that doesn't need to be stated anywhere. But it's a tempting sentence formulation. Avoid it. And the other one is in conclusion. When you start a conclusion by saying in conclusion, of course it's a conclusion. It's your last paragraph. It's redundant. You don't need it. And you can always simply cross that out and it's a better paragraph. And if you need that in conclusion to get you started, which is, you know, kind of get you thinking the right mode for a concluding paragraph, go ahead and say in conclusion. And then after you're done with the paragraph, go back out and delete it, and you'll be just fine. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Look at my information under supplemental material for the outline and the objective voice phrases, and let's knock this thing out of the park. The assignment is up now. I'm gonna post it immediately after this video, and you have until next Tuesday, which will be a full week, to get it done. And then that will give us some time to do a revision if we need one, and which would take us right to the end of the semester. And if we don't need a revision, if you guys all do awesome on this, I'll find something else to do to get us to the end over the last 2 or 3 weeks that is fun. So there's some incentive to do well on this. And we will make it through the end. Everybody stay healthy and stay safe. I did have someone tell me that they've contracted the coronavirus. If you are sick, let me know. I need to know what's happening in your world so we can get through this semester. Do not just vanish on me, okay? That's it.